Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. Back with me as always, my co-host, Jamie Franks. Jamie, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Always good to be here. I tell you, man, we had a couple of days of warm weather here. It's like gorgeous weather out in San Diego all the time, but I tell you, we broke out the party shirts, the ZERT Death Blossom party shirt. They are still available for anybody that wants one, but it is party shirt season for sure. If you're heading to the range, it's a great range shirt. How's it going, man?
Good. We out here, we like San Diego has what we call the May gray. So it's like, what is it? It's about 62 degrees outside right now. But I taught a class over the weekend, taught a class on Sunday, and it was very summer. It was very much like a summer day at the range out there where we teach. So
we had a ZERT class over the weekend. At the time of this recording, it was in Pennsylvania, and they dealt with a little bit of light mist, I think, on Saturday, but then the weather turned out to be amazing. A buddy of mine just sent me a screenshot from Savannah, and at 7:50 in the PM, it was 91 degrees, and 91 degrees in Savannah is swampy. So I was like, thank God that's not me. It was a nice cool 72 degrees last night. I mean, ACs are on, and but it's still manageable. It's just gorgeous, man. And and we didn't have a bad winter here, as far as snow and whatnot and extreme cold. So looking forward to some nice weather. But somebody asked me about fair food the other day, like, what's your favorite fair food? I'm like, I don't want to think about fair food because that's fall time and we're just getting into the summer. So that's
yes, like back home where I'm from in North Carolina, the fair is in the fall, but out here it is in the summer.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right.
So
they have a lot of fairs out there.
We have like the San Diego County Fair, and then it's kind of towards the end of the summer we have is the California State Fair up in Sacramento. But yeah, the fair here is pretty big. It's just like I don't know, these days at this stage in my life or whatever, like I don't love going to places that are big crowds and all that kind of stuff. But the other thing was, the last time I went to the fair, I got the tickets for free. So getting into the fair cost me nothing. So that aside, I went to the ATM before I went and took out $200.
Okay.
And when I got there, parking was like $40 or something stupid.
Oh, yeah.
And then we went in, and I didn't buy, no alcoholic beverages or anything, just like regular lunch and just a regular drink, a soda or whatever. But that $200 was gone like that. And I was like, all right, that's it.
Yeah. They're fun, but I think there was a time when they were probably more fun. Now, and I guess what I mean by that is, during that time, you would go to all of the fairs in this area. It would be like, okay, we got this fair this weekend, we got that fair this weekend. And now it's, all right, which is the best one we want to go to, just for the experience, just to say we did it. And that's it. We're not fair hopping, if you will. But there was definitely a time where it was probably a lot more exciting.
Well, I remember growing up going to the North Carolina State Fair. And again, my dad was a fireman, so we could always get in for free. But when I was a teenager, I could take my girlfriend and I could pay for everything for me and my girlfriend. And we could have a great full day and night at the fair for $60. And
oh yeah. I mean,
those days are long
those
gone.
days are long gone. There are, Yeah, the Big E is the big one up in this area in New
Hmm.
England, and it's just such a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, parking is probably $50 to park for the day, which is just ridiculous, and a lot of it is just insane. But again, you do one a year or one a season just to say that you did it. You know, my focus this year is just getting out there and getting as much camping as possible. But
Hmm.
you brought up a good point there about the crowds. I'm with you, man. I'm not a big fan of the very crowded places. Especially in places where you are a soft target, meaning you can't carry, you can't. And if you're at a local fair, and that's fine, but the Big E is in Massachusetts, and there's no reciprocity there, so can't carry there.
Hmm.
Um, so that's always a thing. Now, somebody asked me over the weekend. They said, "Hey, do you feel?" Because we went camping over the weekend, and it was in Massachusetts. So, uh, and the question was, do you feel like weirded out, or do you feel naked, so to speak, when you're not able to carry up there? And I mean, the question is, yeah, it doesn't. I don't love that feeling that I'm not carrying, because I carry every single day, and if you have the ability to carry and you can, then you should. Obviously, we like to, and we've always talked about training ourselves in other ways, and you always carry a knife or you carry something that you have, but it's also more about just understanding your environment, understanding the situation, and kind of having situational awareness
Hmm.
at all times. um, and when you deal with crowds like that, it's important to make sure that your situational awareness is turned all the way up. Be observant, keep your eyes open.
Well, where I'm from, we have like a lot of, there's like a, there's the county fair, state fair kind of things where you have to buy a ticket and
Yep.
go through a entry control point or whatever.
Yep.
But where I'm from, we also have like a lot of street fairs, or festivals or whatever that
Okay.
you just like people can just show up and like the nowadays I think we're getting into some territory with our border being wide open
Yeah.
that like individuals are coming across the border and are going to these kinds of things with the intention of being predatory, but also I think like events that are free that don't cost you anything to get into just tend to bring out like the garbage in humanity anyway. It's
Yeah.
the people that want to get out of their house but can't really afford to get out of their house. So
Right.
hey, we'll all go down to this thing for free, and it brings out teenagers, depending on where you live, gangs, again, like depending on where you live, extremist groups, things like
Yeah.
that. And so you're dealing with many different levels of the scourge of humanity. I just read an article that there was some kind of big music festival in
Hmm.
Texas,
Oh, right.
and there was like this like theft ring going on where they
Yeah.
like uh and it was actually oh shoot, I think it was I think they said that the police like brought in other police from a different area because they knew that this threat existed, so they wanted to beef up the law enforcement presence, and they ended up arresting these guys that were part of this theft ring. And they were and like this theft ring had only had been operating for like a day,
Oh,
and
oh.
and stole like when they arrested the guys, they had like 100 cell phones and stuff that they had stolen. So like so it's like this
W-
professional theft ring that they said that had come from, I want to say they came from Colombia, but now that
Were
I
they were
say
were
that,
they targeting cars or like
no,
pickpockets?
people. Yep. Yeah,
Okay,
like
so
like a they were like a distraction
got it. Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
pickpocket kind of deal.
Yeah. So I mean that's great that you kind of bring that up, and it's almost like we planned this as the topic of the day, kind of rolled right into this from that. Um it's it's not by force, right? So there's not these groups aren't coming in and sitting here and taking a weapon and jamming it in your stomach
Right.
saying give me your wallet or whatnot. They're using other tactics, and that's why it's important to train yourself with other things. We yes, we always talk about training with firearms, medical equipment, but there's other things that you can do. And we talked about this on an earlier podcast. We talked about situational awareness, walking into a restaurant and noticing, how many exits, what's this person wearing, just to kind of scan the room. And that was something that you could have easily done. And maybe you guys have done. I know that I've been out to dinner a couple of times and the question comes up saying, what color shoes is the waitress wearing? And it's funny because sometimes you don't pay attention and sometimes you do pay attention. I think it's probably easier to notice things that seem out of place, but you may miss the stuff that looks normal. So, if you go to a fair and there's a bunch of people just wearing black trench coats walking around the fair with, glasses on the entire time and it's July, you're going to probably notice that a little bit more than the dude dressed in maybe a silly Death Blossom party shirt or cool Death Blossom party shirt in the, in that atmosphere. Um, and it gets, and if it's you and you're aware, that's one thing, but you have a young daughter. I've got some friends with young children, boys and girls, and I think it's just as important if you're clocking these things and you're identifying these things. you I think it's important to have everybody be aware of situations like that. It can't just be your situational awareness, because like you just said, these groups are coming in and they're targeting. Sure, they may be looking for your cell phone, but some of these rings out there are looking, I mean, it's child trafficking, right? And you never know when that person or that child could get targeted, and grabbed and abducted. Um, love him or hate him, Tim Kennedy, and I remember seeing this on video, set up a situation with one of his children. I think it was one of his daughters, where they basically waited till she walked out of school thinking everything was fine, and masked dudes came and snatched her up. And again, it was all planned and it was all recorded and whatnot, but to show you how oblivious kids are. I mean, let me just, I'll take the kids out of it. How oblivious people are.
Yeah, they're like, you can look up these videos on YouTube where the ones I've seen are like college age kid, maybe high school, like high school, college age kids. I think they were on a college campus though, but like sitting outside, buried in their phone. That's probably something that you're gonna hear me say over and over and over again, is like, when you're out in public, get your head out of your phone.
Right.
But these college age kids, young adults, but adults nonetheless, like, are so buried in their phone. Yep. They'll be like a group of like 5 kids, and there's like I said, you can find these videos on YouTube, and they'll like have a person walk by right in front of them, like slowly walk by in front of them in a gorilla suit. And then they'll have a person walk by in a clown suit. And then they'll have the gorilla chase the clown right in front of them. And then they'll have a person in a gorilla suit on a unicycle. And then they'll come up to them like 5 minutes later and go, "Hey, did you guys just notice anything?" And they kind of look at each other and go, "No, what are you talking about?" So those videos, it sounds outrageous, but they're purposely like doing these things to show how oblivious people are to their surroundings, because they're, most of the time, they're sucked into their phone.
Yeah.
And like there's videos, one of the things I'm going to talk about is kind of as how predators choose who they're going to prey on. But there are lots of videos now, like if you watch things like active self-protection, there's there's a police one that I follow on Instagram, but they show all these, like, most of it is like security camera footage of crimes happening, And a huge percentage of it is it's either one person or like two-person like teams, and they almost exclusively target people that are like walking down the street, so you're on the move, and you've got your head buried in your phone, and
Right.
and you're making yourself a really vulnerable target when you do that for many reasons. But yeah, back to your original point, like most people today, it seems to me, are just severely lacking in situational awareness. And I have thought, like, not to jump too far ahead here, but I started teaching my daughter this at a really early age, and kind of at the risk of removing some of that, childhood innocence or whatever. Like, I'm as soon as she was old enough to understand it, I made her understand there are people in this world that will want to. I use the word steal so she can understand. Like, there's people that'll take you and steal you. Like, kind of like if you steal a candy bar from the store, there are people in this world that will want to try to steal you away from me and your mom.
Right.
And then it helped, like, as she has grown up, just so she knows I'm not just making things up or living in some like weird paranoid fantasy world. I point things out to her constantly, and I've done that for her entire life. And going to the Tim Kennedy thing, I have wanted to do that for a long time. I've
Yeah.
wanted to like set up like a drill on my daughter, and have somebody try to lure her into a vehicle, or have somebody try to do something like that. But I haven't done it because I think there's the potential for that to be very traumatizing, and
I
b
mean,
if after that something real happens, I don't want it to be in the back of her mind that this is just dad fucking with me. Like, so I want to train her on what to do and what to look for, and then I guess
well,
without
when you
running.
say, let me back that up for a second. When you say you don't want it to be traumatizing, um, I get that, right? Because you don't want to, I guess, make a scar, and
Yeah,
anybody that does this. And so, um, but I don't know. It could be a scar that is well worth receiving if it never happens again. And I get what you're saying. Like, you don't want that to be cry wolf, and then when it happens again, it's, oh, I'm just being tested again.
yeah,
And but that could simply be a conversation like, this is it, this is the one test you will ever get from me. Just understand, this is how you did, this is what you need to fix. We'll train to fix that, but this will never be a test again. If this happens, it's for real.
yeah.
I mean, it could be, right? And you hope that that message is clear, and that a young person understands this. I also think it's very important what age you do this.
Yeah, and
Um,
like, not to sound too, not to, I don't want to blow the dust off my tinfoil hat, but like, like those YouTube prank guys that got shot. Like, there's the potential for that to go bad, because
yeah,
if I was at my local grocery store and I saw some guys trying to kidnap a girl, I would fucking shoot them, and then they could be like, "Oh, we were just doing a test on our daughter." Like, "Oh, well, that was a
right.
bad
Well,
idea."
that's
So, I mean, so there's
and
also
that's
the
why,
potential for it to go
right.
south too.
And that's why I believe, if I remember correctly, this one with Kennedy was done at the school, and I believe everybody around, like the school, all of the adults, the teachers, they were all made aware of the situation. And I believe it was after school. So, hopefully it's a controlled environment, and it's controlled enough where nothing obviously like that happens. Those pranks that those kids do, or that these, influencers do, where they walk up to people and make stupid shit, say stupid shit, man, those people deserve to be punched in the face. And I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. But I think that it's very important of the age, if you start
Mhm.
to test and challenge your child to be aware of their surrounding. Um, and I believe it's how you do it too. Like you just said, you don't want to make it scary thing. You want to make it a informative thing, learning, constantly learning and understanding that it, there's bad people out there
Yeah.
and they can't be naive.
But literally, I mean, from the time she was 2 or 3 years old, when I thought she was old enough to start understanding, there are certain things that I've told her again and again and again and again and again and again and again, that if this ever happens, this is what you do, and do it as hard as you can, as violently as you can, as fast as you can, as loud as you can, because you may only get one chance.
Right.
It's when we go to the range and we shoot drills, if we're doing barricade drills or something like that, you're not going to throw yourself on the ground as hard as you can, because you don't want to be sore tomorrow, and you want
Right.
to, I want to run through this drill 2 or 3 times, so I don't want to go too hard. But like in a life threatening situation, like, this is what I've told her. You need to go as hard as you can, because there may not be a second chance.
Right.
Like your life could very well depend on it. So like,
Yeah.
Don't pull punches, don't hold anything back. Like, go, like literally go as hard as you can. And it would be good to be able to assess if, in a real situation, or a situation that she thinks is real, will she do what I have told her a million times, or will
Right.
she freeze, or will she have like a little lag in her decision making, or will she just go into it? And I mean, my daughter, she's a diver.
Yeah.
And so she's been dive certified since she was 10. And like, so I think like I have exposed her to, hopefully enough stressful environments that kind of force you into decision making modes and stuff. And I don't know, I haven't been able to, like, I've always erred on the side that, like, running a drill on her like that, I guess without the potential resources of Tim Kennedy, I'm not sold that it's a great idea, but maybe it's something
Sure.
I'll put a little more thought into. But
Yeah. And I mean, that's just that's the Cliff Notes version of what happened, right? I don't know the setup. I don't know what the aftermath. I'm sure that there's probably a video out there of him explaining it all. And, if you want to go out there and look for it and see how he did it, check him out. Like I said, love him, hate him, whatever. He's the only one that I remember seeing doing something like that. Other people may have done it. They just don't publicize it like he did. I'm sure that there are other people out there that are teaching their children the ways of, I guess, self-awareness, or, environmental awareness in their own kind of pace plan. And that's fine. But I think it really should be done. Again, the situation that brought this topic kind of to the top for me, and why I felt like we should talk about it, is it was Amy was out at a store with her daughter, and she kind of clocked some guy that just looked weird walking into Walmart. And then I don't know, she saw the guy leave, and then she had to go back out to the car. And then when she came back in, she noticed the guy was back in, and she was, he was over near where the daughter was, and he never had anything. He didn't have any items, never walked in, and he was following them. He was outside. Again, you're walking in and out of Walmart. Now, Walmart's a weird place as it is. So who knows with Walmart, there was a time when I was a loss prevention guy, and I worked for a couple of different big retailers, and sure, I was always walking around a store, not carrying stuff, watching people, but that was for that reason. Maybe that person was that, but I guess the question that was brought up by me is, well, what did you say anything to her? And she said, yeah, I kind of said, what are you doing? Like, I don't know if she was not paying attention, or she just, or whatnot, but basically, the 13-year-old was like, no, that's being mean. He's just an older man. It's fine. And just was kind of oblivious to the fact of what was happening. And I got to tell you, the kids these days, they dress how they want to dress, and some of it is not the best. And it's just like, man, you
Yeah, no
know,
kidding.
you're right. I mean, I don't know. I guess each child has their style, right? Like my nieces are, my niece just turned 16 and she wanted to go get her belly button pierced, and there she was on Mother's Day walking around with like a half shirt on, showing off her belly button. I'm just like, okay, really, do we need to do this? Um, so they're going to dress how they want to dress, and sometimes that's not attracting the best intentions and the best kind of people.
So, I mean, there's one of the things I always talk about. I usually relate it to firearms is like building an energy around stuff. Like parents think they're protecting their kids from things by like I'm never going to let my kid have a toy gun, and I'm not going to let my kid play violent games, and I'm not going to let my kid watch violent shows, and I'm not going to let my kid. And they think they're doing this for protection.
Right.
But I always say that if you do that, the very first time your kid is at a friend's house and playing hide and go seek, and they hide under the bed and they see a shotgun under the bed, they're going to be drawn to it like a freaking magnet, because you have gone so far out of your way to keep them away from this, that it has created this energy that's going to become magnetism, and they're going to be drawn to it. My daughter has been so exposed to guns for her entire life. You could dump a dump truck load of guns in my driveway, and when she came home from school, she would just look at it and go, oh, I guess dad did something dumb, and she would just walk right past it.
Right.
And like would not even care. And it's the same thing for junk food. You try to keep your kids away from junk food. As soon as they get away from you and get access to junk food, they're going to be drawn to it like a magnet. I grew up with this kid named David, and his dad was in the Army, and his dad thought he was doing a great thing by like forcing him. He would make him run a mile every single day after school. Every day, rain or shine, cold, hot, didn't matter. His dad would force him to run a mile every single day after school. And I'm sure in his dad's mind, he's going to train his kid to be this great soldier, and he's starting now, and he's going to make him strong, and he's going to build up his endurance, and blah, 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 blah. As soon as we became teenagers, and this kid, David, was old enough to tell his dad, F you, like he became like the biggest, fattest, laziest, like person ever. And it's, so there's two sides to everything. And when you try to like isolate your kids from the fact that there is bad in the world, like what you're really doing is opening the door to it, I think. Again, I don't want to go so far as to traumatize my daughter, but I've always put it not in the back of her mind. I've always put it in the front of her mind that like this is out there. And yes, I will protect you, but there's going to come a time like right now, she takes herself back and forth to school. She goes to school and home from school by herself. Like, and so now,
and you're not always going to be there.
Right.
Yeah. You're not always going to be there. And so, and these kids, they want to do more. I mean, I don't know, like my friend Jamie's son, Liam, they go walk to the center of town, and even Amy's daughter Mabel goes walking to the center of town, and they want to go to the mall and spend hours at the mall on a Sunday walking around. And obviously they don't want to be surrounded by parents, and nobody's parents are sitting there walking 20 paces behind them. But these kids are out there exposed and potentially vulnerable if they're not being trained and talked to on how to be aware of their situation. Their situational awareness is not on point when they are out of the protection of the mama or papa bear, if you will. Now, I don't remember getting dropped off at the mall at 13 years old. I don't. I
what
can't.
Do you mean? Like you don't think
I don't
you did,
I don't remember if I did. I do know that for a good portion of time. And I will say this, that Saturdays, my parents owned a business growing up and they worked 8 to 5. And you were on your own, kid. And we had a bicycle. And I hopped on that bicycle and we rode down to the town pool, not wearing a helmet, by the way, rode down to the town pool to go spend all day between the town pool or the Southbury Plaza or back to the town pool. And then you would wait there until your parents came and picked you up after work. And there was no, by the way, no cell phones. So it was, you're here or you're there.
Yep.
And be here at this time because this is when I'm coming to pick you up. So I guess if you think about that in today's day and age, imagine your daughter going to the local town pool on the bicycle for 8 hours and having no communication, no cell phone. That's a scary thought. Now, is it scarier because of the day and age that we're living in now compared to then? I mean, did our parents sit there and be like, shit, I wonder if I'm going to show up at 5 o'clock and my son's going to be there or not? I definitely wasn't told about situational awareness.
I have had this type of discussion so many times, and for whatever reason, it has come up a lot lately. Actually, I've had this discussion a couple of times just in the last couple of weeks. I fully admit that I could be wrong about this, but I guess maybe I choose to believe that the amount of predators that are out there now, the amount of mental illness, the level of sickness or the level of violence or whatever, I do not believe that it is any higher now than it was 30 years ago when we were kids. I just think, like you said, we live in a day and age where we hear about it now and we're able to see it more. And I actually was just talking about this last night. I said, when I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, well, outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, when we watched the 6 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock news, it was only things that were happening around Raleigh, North Carolina.
Right.
But now when some kid gets, assaulted or abused or kidnapped or whatever in Toledo, Ohio, we're all going to hear about it now. It's going to be on Facebook. It's going to be on the national news. And that's just something that, like you said, that we didn't have back then. And so, and like, I think I grew up in a pretty unique environment. I definitely did get dropped off at the mall and picked back up and stuff like that. But also, I think I've told this story before. I also lived in a place in a time in an environment where my friends and I, with no prior planning and no prior permission being granted, we would be on the school bus on our way home on a Friday afternoon from school. And we would just decide on our own on the spur of the moment that we were going to go camping, and we would get off the school bus. We would run to our houses, throw some ramen noodles and some stuff in a backpack, and we would just trek off into the woods in whatever direction we happened to pick that day. And we would go camping for 2 days. And I would like leave a little note on the bar that was like, Mom went camping with Brian and Silas, be back on Sunday. And that was totally fine. I didn't get in trouble for that a single time.
Right.
And I was off in the woods where nobody knew where we were and nobody could find us for 2 days. And like you said, without a cell phone or without a way to get a hold of me.
Right.
That probably would not fly today for many reasons, but also as a parent, would I be cool with my daughter leaving me a note that just said, "Hey, I'm going off into the wilderness and I'll be back on Sunday"? Like that probably wouldn't sit well with me. But like I feel a little hypocritical about that because
I kind of want to unpack that. Why? Knowing that you did that and your parents were like, okay, cool. And now you would probably have issue with it. I'm not saying serious issue, but
would I let her see, I guess this is where the difference lies in it. It kind of makes me, it forces me to ponder some uncomfortable questions about my parents' parenting. But I mean, if I knew approximately where my daughter was going to be and who she was going to be with, and she asked me, I guess I would be okay with it. But like as a parent now, it's a little, I don't know, it's confusing or bewildering or amazing. I don't know but like that my parents were just totally fine with like not knowing where I was at all for 2 days in the wilderness with knives and hatchets and fire with my friends, so.
Right. But I don't know that it was just your parents. I just believe it was that generation of parents
Well,
where,
I mean, in my example, that's at
yeah,
least 3 sets of parents that were all okay with it.
yeah,
So,
exactly. That we're all okay with just that happening. And now, oh, and then, yeah, I mean, even mine, like I said, we would literally, you would, you would either stay home all day or you would take your bicycle and ride it down to the town
yep,
pool and meet up with friends. And that's where you were. Um, and you would ride around the town of Southbury and, you know, do things like go to the McDonald's there, go to Denmo's, like, and that was it. And for 8 hours, your parents had no idea if you were abducted or not.
yep.
Granted, you had to, I mean, you did have to pay to get in the town pool. So, there was that whole situation there. But I mean, there it is, and it's
Just
just insane.
just to give my parents a little bit of merit and credit,
Okay.
there was one time, like I said before, I would always like leave a note, and and they at least knew. I mean, honestly, like as far as like geographic location, latitude and longitude, they didn't know where I was, but they did know I was off somewhere in the local area camping out in the woods with these other two people. So there was one time, it was during the summer, I was out of school and I was at home and I was bored. And my mom was a nurse, so she worked odd hours sometimes. Like sometimes she'd work a late shift, sometimes she'd work an early shift. But it was a summer. It was a day during the summer. We were out of school. I was at home. I was bored, and just kind of like I don't even remember why, but I was like, I'm gonna go check the mail.
Okay.
And where I lived in the middle of freaking nowhere, and our driveway, like I think it's one of Jeff Foxworthy's things, like if directions to your house include the words "turn off the main road," you might be a redneck. Uh,
Yeah.
so that was definitely we lived like my driveway was about a half a mile long. Like we lived about a half a mile off the main road, and like my mailbox was so far away, like you could not see it from the house. So, but I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I'm gonna go check the mailbox, and she was like, okay. I walked to the mailbox, the half mile up to the mailbox, checked it. There was no mail. As I was closing the mailbox, I saw my friend Brian come up, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing." And he's like, "Let's go camp." And I was like, "Okay." And so I went straight from my mailbox to his house, got some camping gear together, and we did the same thing I just described. So my mom was at home, and like, a period of time went by, and I hadn't come back from the mailbox. And then so
It's
then she
bad.
went up to the mailbox to look for me. And then when she got there, she opened the mailbox and the mail was in the mailbox. So to her,
Oh,
that appeared as though I never even made it to the mailbox. But
right.
when I was there, the mail hadn't come yet. And by the time she went to look for me, it had.
Oh,
And so in that instance, as far as she was concerned, I never made it to the mailbox and I was gone.
oh boy.
And so she did in that one particular time, she went to like DEFCON 1 and like called the sheriff and started calling people and
Oh,
had like search parties out looking for us. And
wow.
my dad's friend Billy, like he kind of knew the area where Brian and I would likely have gone camping. And so he went and found us in that area, and he's like, you boys better get home right now. And we were like, what? And he's like, the sheriff is out looking for you. There's teams of people out looking for you. And we were like, oh
Yeah,
God.
that's a bad
And
time.
yeah, so that was like my mom grounded me for like a month, and like, I got in so much, but that was the one time, just so my parents don't sound like complete psychopaths.
No,
They did care,
right.
but yeah, so going into this, obviously we've hit on situational awareness. So, what does that look like? And like, really, this may sound bad, but I mean, ultimately each person, you're only responsible for yourself. So one of the things I've always taught to other people, and I've tried to teach it to my daughter too, is like, really the name of the game is people that wish to do you harm, potentially, make them choose somebody else. Like, you're responsible for you. I don't want it to happen to me. I would prefer it didn't happen to anybody else either, but they can be responsible for them. Make
Right.
the bad guy choose somebody else. And so I'll throw this out there. My friend Gary Quisenberry has
Oh,
written
good
a
old Gary.
series of books.
Yep.
This one is the first one. It's Spotting Danger Before It Spots You. Then he made a follow on to this that was Spotting Danger Before It Spots Your Teens. And then he made another follow on that's Spotting Danger Before It Spots Your Kids. And so each one of these, this one, it's kind of geared towards adults. And then the teen one, goes into more teen specific stuff. And then the kid one focuses on more kid specific stuff. But then in those
Right.
ones, he also goes into like online predators and social media and stuff like that.
Right.
This one has some
Th-
really good stuff in it.
Let,
Really
yeah.
starting
Let
at
me
the
just.
very first page. There's this guy Jamie wrote a
Oh wow.
forward
Look at
in this
that.
one, but yeah.
Hey, that's a whole separate, and maybe that's part two of
What?
this, the online portion
Oh yeah,
of that.
yeah.
So uh, let me just go back to a second. Sorry, I guess the do not disturb on the phone was breaking through. So the online portion of that is a separate and more intense level of this situational awareness, and what parents are 100% not seeing,
Well, and
because
that's what I was going to say. Is it's probably the one aspect of this that most people know the least about, and it's the out of sight, out of mind thing. If it's not right in front of your face, you can either convince yourself that it doesn't exist or pretend like it's not happening, but
right.
it probably is on
Yeah.
some level.
Yeah. And that's with all of these apps, all of them, the TikToks, the Snapchats, the Instagram. It's very, very easy for people to hide behind a fake profile, anonymity, and they have access to your kids probably through a couple of different ways. Obviously, that movie that came out last year. Oh God, I can't think
Fast
of
and
the name of it.
Furious,
No, definitely not that one.
Fast and
It wasn't.
Furious 10,
It wasn't Aquaman either.
Fast and Furious 11, Fast and
No.
Furious 12.
So, the Sound of Freedom.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, that was obviously, that's something that parents should probably show their kids. Obviously, that had a lot to. There was a lot of good information coming out of that, and it was obviously based on factual events.
Yeah.
But when did Gary write those books?
This one was written in 20. Shoot, where's it at? It's in here somewhere. Off the top of my head, I think it was approximately 2018, 2019.
Okay.
He sent me. Come on! It's right here. It's right here. He sent me an advanced copy. 2020. I was close.
Okay.
He sent me an advanced copy. Me and several other people, not just me. I'm not that special. And asked us to read it and provide feedback. And then when I read it and I thought it was great. I highly recommend these, all of them, especially if you have kids and teens. I actually don't have the teen one because my
Okay.
daughter is just getting into that territory. So I probably will pick that up. But these are great books. Gary was a federal air marshal for many years.
Yep.
He's an Army veteran, but he was a federal air marshal. Really smart guy, and he's a good shooter and a good father, and apparently a good writer. But this is what he put this in the book in the forward. I read what my take on it was because I think it's applicable and I think it's good advice anyway. So the quote he put from me in this on the front of this book. It says, I said, there's an old saying in sports, the best defense is a good offense. This is supremely true when it comes to personal defense. So many people's plans for preparations for personal defense begin and end with the concealed carry of a firearm, gunfighting tactics, and possibly martial arts. This ideal is perpetuated by the booming quote unquote tactical industry with its peddling of everyday carry gadgets and social media videos romanticizing the CCW Instagram quick draw. This is a book that had to be written. People need to understand that making it back home and safe and sound shouldn't rely on your fighting or shooting ability. The secret of self-defense is recognizing and avoiding dangerous situations altogether, which is what makes this book so brilliant. So this book is not about how to get your gun out fast and shoot everybody. Like this is this is the thing that I've talked about many other times, kind of in many other references in this podcast. This is why I think nothing bad is ever going to happen to me. And it's not that I'm like living in a dream world with my head up my ass, but it's because like I have trained about this stuff, read about this stuff, taught other people about this stuff so much that when I walk into a situation and I'm aware of everything, I think evildoers or bad guys, whatever you want to call it, I think they're going to choose somebody else because I don't like, I think I've done this stuff enough now where I've just made it natural. And I'll talk about this in a second, but I think nothing's ever going to happen to me because I've trained so much and I've prepared so much, and my situational awareness and my powers of observation, I think have become just so naturally ingrained that I do it all the time. And I make it really easy for the bad guy to just choose somebody else.
Now, and I'm not saying that you're wrong there. You know, obviously that's the way that you think and you perceive it. I do wonder or question if it may provide you a false sense of security. And again, that's just kind of a question to throw out in the ether.
That's a great point. But
right, you know, like it's not something that you need to sit here and counter or rebut that, but just understand, like, you know, and this is for people that may think and feel the same way that Jamie does. Make sure don't think about that and think that you're that false sense of security. And it goes right back to what you just said about people go and they get a firearm and now all of a sudden they're like,
and now I'm ready.
I'm good. I'm trained. I passed my 15-minute shooting portion of my CCW and I'm safe. I don't have to worry about anything ever again.
I've seen it. Just another analogy. I've seen it in the off-road world. People go buy a Jeep. They go buy a winch. They bolt the winch to the front of the Jeep, and now they are ready for anything. And that winch that you don't know how to use will kill you just as quickly as a gun will. But so don't misunderstand. I don't walk through the world thinking I'm bulletproof. And I don't think because I have X and Y and Z strapped in my body that I'm, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger from Commando. That's not what I'm saying. Right. I am actively doing all these things to make people look at me and go, I think I'll choose somebody else. And so that was really the next thing I was going to go into that is talked about in Gary Quisenberry's book, Spotting Danger Before It Spots You.
We might have to get Gary on that. We might have to get Gary on the show.
I thought about that when we first talked about doing this topic. There wasn't enough time to wrap him in, but maybe we can get him on here. I'm sure he would. It just would probably need more than 12 hours notice. Yeah. But one of the things he talks about is the 7-second prod, PROD, and that's how an adversary chooses their victim. And he says it takes them 7 seconds to assess a person, and what they're looking for is their perception of you, just their overall perception of shit. Let's see. It's perception of. I just wrote down perception. Yeah, their initial perception of who you are. The R is their perception of what risk you might pose to them. Your observed value. So, are you wearing a Rolex watch and a a diamond necklace and a Tiffany's tennis bracelet, and you have the new iPhone 18, that kind of stuff. And then their read on your defenses. So their overall perception of you, what risk they think you might pose to them, your observed value, and then what defenses you might have. And so like this is something I've talked about a lot of times that like people don't like to hear, don't want to hear, want to fool themselves into thinking it doesn't matter. But like if you're in good shape and you stand up straight and tall and you walk with confidence and you have your head on a swivel, like that right there is enough, I think, to make people just want to choose something else. Because if you're in good shape, standing up straight and tall with your head on a swivel and carrying yourself confidently, like what perception does that, if they're looking at you for 7 seconds, what perception does that create? It probably gives the perception that you're going to be a harder target. Also, going back to your story, the one thing that jumped out at me when you were talking about your story about being in Walmart is predators prey on your friendliness, on your people, just not you. When I say yours, I don't mean you, but just a person's friendliness and a person's natural inclination to want to avoid conflict. And so a couple things play hand in hand with that. One of my friends, he was a Navy SEAL. He was a Dev Group SEAL Team 6 Navy SEAL. When his daughter was 17 or 18, she was at the lake with her friends, and she decided she was going to leave. And like, so all her friends were like still down in the water. She decided she was going to pack up her stuff and leave. She was wearing a bikini, excuse me. She was wearing a bikini, and she just like put on some jean shorts and just had her bikini top. And she was like, she was just going to walk back to her car and leave. As she was I guess he said like at this lake, everybody's cars were just kind of parked along the sides of the road. So as she was coming up from the lake, bikini top, jean shorts, attractive young girl walking back towards her car, like these dudes pull up in like this old like 70s Cadillac is what he said. And he said they were like holding a map, and they were like, hey, we're trying to find our friends, but we're not really sure where we are. Can you show us on this map where we are right now so we can find our friends? And then she wanted to be very friendly. She wanted to be very accommodating. She wanted to, help these gentlemen that were lost. And so she was like, yeah, no problem. And as she started approaching the car, they were like pulling the map further in. So she had to get closer and closer and closer.
Right.
And then they grabbed her and tried to pull her through the window.
Oh, wow.
And she did exactly what I've told my daughter to do a million times. Like, as hard as she possibly could, she was kicking and punching and scratching and grabbing hair and grabbing eyeballs and screaming and just making herself like a crocodile that had 8 mouths.
Right. Yeah.
And they were trying to speed off and pull her into the car, but she went as hard as she could, as fast and as violently as she could, and they got maybe 500 feet down the street and just said, to hell with this, and just threw her out of the car as they continued to drive away. And she was scared shitless, and she was a little bit banged up and bruised up. But guess what happened? That was the end of it. She didn't get kidnapped. She didn't, whatever they had planned to do with her didn't end up happening. So that's a quick story to point out that like people rely on on other people's tendencies to want to avoid confrontation, and most people most of the time want to be nice. But like, you don't have to be rude and you don't have to be mean, but you do have to understand, like, if she had told those guys like, no thanks, sorry, I can't help you, and these two complete strangers think that you're a rude person for the next 15 seconds of their lives, who cares?
That's
it's
fine.
not your problem.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, it's totally fine.
Now I think there's a fine line of rude person to, complete. I guess you don't want to, come off as confrontational, because then it may escalate right past.
Correct.
Okay, well then now it becomes violent. So
you don't want to be like, fuck you, rednecks.
Exactly.
And then that creates a problem that didn't exist before. But right. Like I said, you don't need to be rude. You don't need to be confrontational, but you also don't need to be obligated to help a complete stranger that you have no obligation to.
Exactly.
There is a portion. I actually just it's so funny that we're doing this topic because I just saw this on Instagram yesterday. It was this girl that I'm not going to put her out there. But she's a well-known gunfluencer, I think, on Instagram. And I think she had just been at the NRA annual meetings, and she was coming home, and she got off the plane and was walking back to her car at the airport, and was a very similar situation to the one you described.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she clocked some guy that was like at the little where you got off the little airport tram to go back to the self parking lot.
Yeah.
And she noticed a guy that was by himself that had no luggage. So she's like, typically a person at an airport, that's especially in this part of the airport,
Right.
you would have some sort of luggage because you're either leaving to go on a trip or just coming back from a trip. He said he had nothing. He was by himself, and he was obviously like outside of the part of the airport where there's any kind of security. And he was just kind of lingering. He wasn't getting on the tram, wasn't getting off the tram, didn't seem like he was waiting for anybody. And she noticed him watching her, and then she got on the escalator to go down, and she kept looking back behind her to check to see. And she said just as she was getting to the bottom of the escalator, then she saw him get on. So he let her get just far enough away where she would think she wasn't being followed, but then he actually did get on the escalator. And then she did what she should have, because since she was just getting off a plane, she had no gun, she had no knife. And again, a person that wishes you to do you harm would know that in advance. An airport is a great person to encounter unarmed people, because a person like me and you, even, we can't carry at an airport.
Right.
That's kind of
and by the way, these airlines, and it's bullshit. If you have been flagged as somebody that travels with a firearm, they seal your bag up. Like Delta, the last time I went and picked up my suitcase, which had my carry piece on it, they decided to start wrapping it with zip ties. And I was like, no, I ripped it out of their hand. I was like, no, you're not doing that.
I have not encountered this yet.
Yeah, that's with Delta. American, they just obviously they've got big giant flags all over the bag, and basically letting anybody know that is paying attention, there's a firearm in this bag, so you could be targeted for theft at that point. So just be wary of that. But go ahead.
But yeah, so back to the story. She felt like she was being followed. So she didn't have any weapons because she had just gotten off an airplane. She said there was an older couple near her, and so she went up to them and was like, hey, excuse me, which way are you walking? Do you mind if I walk with you? And they said, yeah, sure, what's going on? And she I think she gave them the 5-second 5W version. There's this guy, I think he's following me. So she broke her pattern. She got with other people, and then she said they walked a certain distance, and then the guy turned around and then went back up to the platform where he had been. So this is a good story because nothing actually happened, right? And so the thing that disgusted me is maybe she was right, maybe she was wrong, but like the people in the comments were just tearing her up.
Really?
Yeah, like imagine thinking that you're so important that of course this guy was following you, and like somebody, this 90% of this story was in your head, and this is all a fantasy you made up because you want to think you're important enough that people want to follow you or whatever. So you know what? All those negative comments, that may be true. Maybe a part of it is in your head. Maybe this person does have an inflated sense of self-importance, whatever. But the thing about it goes back to my point a second ago. Who cares? She made it home safe. Nothing bad happened to her, and she didn't have to kill anybody, and she did the right things. She disrupted her pattern.
Right.
A lot of people, this is one of the notes I have written down. A lot of people will kind of go for what they know. If I can make it to my car, I'll be safe because you think your car is your safe zone. But if she had continued to try to go to her car in this example, she actually would have been further isolating herself. She would have been making herself an even soft target. you're creating a bottleneck, because once you get to your car, you have to get your car unlocked, you have to get
Right.
the door open, you have to get inside, you have to shut the door. There's
Yeah.
lots of opportunities there for a person to disrupt that cycle, and so she really did the right thing. She didn't continue in the direction of her own car. She joined up with other people. She broke the pattern, so to speak, and she made that and she did say she called the police and gave them so he didn't just go on and pick the next person.
Right.
Hopefully, she did call the police. She did give a description, all that stuff. But she did the right thing.
Right. You want to know what mistake she made? By putting it out on the internet.
Right.
Right. Like that. Like that's the mistake. That's the only thing that she did wrong, because the internet is full of the naysayers, the you did it wrong. I hate to use it, but the mansplainers, like everybody that wants to tell you how you did it wrong and that's not the way and they're the right. That's the internet. I mean, I love it for the fact that we get to be out on the internet and put this video out like we do on YouTube, and we are out there on this podcast, and we always ask for people's comments, and thankfully every comment, for the majority of the time, the comments we get are all good stuff. But when you put something out there, it's just you're asking for it to be just riddled with bullshit. It's a rarity that I go back and read any comments these days, because it's just filled with people that are, oh, this was all internet. I mean, okay, but maybe it was a story for everyone to understand what a situation could look like and what to do right. But and if anybody walked away from it going, okay, I mean, that there's got some value to what she did, then it's fine.
Yeah.
So good on her for recognizing the situation and figuring out a way kind of through it. You bring up a good point. Airports are very, very dangerous, because you can roll into the airport and pay for a parking ticket or not pay for a parking ticket. And you can have all of weapons and tools because you haven't gone through security, and you understand that people coming out do not have any of that.
Right.
And like I just said, with Delta doing what they're doing by zip tying, and this was, our friend Brett talks about this a lot. Our with Delta zip tying your bags. Well, I mean, hey, if I want to go steal some guns, I'm going to go to the airport, sit outside of baggage claim, because you have to get your bag from the baggage claim person. I'm going to wait for that person to get the zip tie bag, and that's it. I'm going to go sit there and walk with that person until they get to a spot where I now have a new bag, a new gun. And you got to be aware of stuff like that. I mean, as soon as I walked away, I literally ripped it right off and I threw it on the floor. And I'm like, here you go. You can have that back. Don't waste it. Same thing with them. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, same thing with American. You've got a big giant orange tag coming off of your bag saying, hey, this has something valuable in it.
So what I was going to say is this is a great time to just throw it out there. I mean, it applies a little bit to this topic. Also, don't be the guy that has Sig, Glock, Noveski, Colt, don't tread on me, 2%, 2A for all stickers all over the back of your car, because again, somebody that's looking for free guns probably just found a place where there are some. So
now,
don't be that person either.
Okay, but that also we talked about this entire episode. Make somebody choose somebody else, right? And this is going to go down a rabbit hole, and this is kind of just wrapping this up, this show up. But it leads you to these questions. We sit there and I'm sorry, people go back and forth on open carry versus concealed carry, right? I personally always conceal carry, won't be that open carry guy. But the open carry guy, is he making somebody choose somebody else because he's immediately who the target is now basically saying, look, here's what I'm carrying, and your prod, if you will, your perception is, well, that guy's carrying a gun, the risk is going to be a little bit more, maybe I'm not going to take that guy. So and I think that's the argument, and you guys can argue about that in the comments below. Send in your comments, send in your thoughts on that. But
well, and I've said before, like, I mean, this could be its own topic for a future episode, but is that going to make somebody pick somebody else? I have said that if I'm in my local grocery store and I'm concealed carrying and I'm with my daughter and I see some fat douchebag in military-ish clothing, open carrying an AK-47, walking into the grocery store, not only is he about to make me pick somebody else, like I'm about to pick him and see if his gunfighting skills are better than mine, because it's you can say that you're an open carry Second Amendment hero, but a person walking into a grocery store with an AK-47 is not a normal behavior, and you're about to draw the wrong kind of attention in my opinion.
Right,
So
right. But I want to kind of clarify some of that. Yes, if you're walking, if you're open carrying into a supermarket with a rifle slung on your back, yeah, we're obviously going to pay attention to that. But remember, there are people out there that are doing that to create some kind of buzz, because they can open carry that because it is the Second Amendment and they're allowed to do that, and that's their right. If you're open carrying and you're wearing a black mask and you're about to pull it down, well, guess what? We're gonna test whose Instagram draw is faster, and see how that comes out. But I'm not talking about a rifle. I'm like, just if you're open carrying your 6-shooter, you got your revolver and your leather
on a hip holster,
on a holster. Does that change the perception of a would-be bad guy? The same
so
thing can
I
be
would
said with
say
the
so. That, like, when I was a kid, there was a gas station in my hometown that was owned by this elderly couple. I mean, by the time I was a kid, they were elderly,
right.
but it was owned by this. It was owned and run by this, like, old, elderly couple, and the old man and the old woman both always carried a 357 Magnum on their hip, and they'd come out and they'd
Perfect.
pump your gas with a 357 on their hip, and their gas station never ever got robbed. My dad used to talk about that all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? This old man, this old woman, they got their 6-shooter on their hip, but they have never been robbed. So maybe there's your answer.
Yeah. And that goes back to, sure, you could sit there and say the guy with the SIG, Glock, whatever sticker on his truck, somebody might say, oh yeah, we're gonna bust into that car and we're gonna probably find a gun. But if you're going to carjack that person who's getting into that car, they may look at it and be like, if we walk up to that door and pop it, I may get popped in the gut with, a 45, because stopping
most
power.
cars that I see that have those stickers all over the back window, the stickers are worth more than the car is. So,
Well, there is something to be said about that.
But you also have to think about out of a 24-hour day, probably 23 of those 24 hours, your car is sitting somewhere with you not in it. So
Of course.
So when you put those kind of stickers on there, you're making your vehicle a target, not necessarily, regardless of whether it makes you a target or not. People are going to target your vehicle, because the reality is most of the time you're not in it. But
yeah,
that was the point of it.
And listen, this is a whole nother episode that we will probably do about truck guns and whether they're necessary, a smart thing, or the dumbest thing out there. But folks, today's episode obviously we obviously, we hope it made you think about this even more. I know the topic just came up for me, and like you said, you were just talking about this, but this should be something that you are talking about with your kids, um,
100%.
all the time, and it's an evolving situation. It, like you were talking about at one point in the show, they were going to fairs to steal stuff. It wasn't about stealing the kids or whatnot. It was about getting your cell phone. And here's the thing, guys, if they get your cell phone, they've got it all. They've got it all. Your bank, your location, your kids' locations, what your house looks like on the inside. If you have a dog, they've got it all.
Yep.
So you lose that, but this was about understanding what dangers are out there. And if your kids or the young generation, whether they're your kids, whether your nieces, nephews, your friends' kids, if you are in this survivalism, this preparedness movement, this is something that you can share with people that are not. This
Yep.
is information, this is training that you can provide people, should you be kind of in the know about it, without needing a range, without needing ammo, without needing a firearm. This is just free information that you can share.
The last and speaking of free information to share, just the last couple of points I had written down, because I talked about the example of the girl that was coming out of the airport and thought the guy may or may not be following her. I talked about breaking the pattern. There's a couple of very simple, very easy ways to do this, and a couple of them are things you can do all the time. And the number one thing may sound dumb, may sound simple. Walk fast wherever you're going. Walk fast. Walk like you got somewhere to go. Because if somebody's trying to follow you, they also have to walk fast. And that's a good way to confirm if they're following you. And it's a good way that makes them stand out.
Yep.
If you're walking at a slow pace because you've got your head in your phone, i.e., up your ass, because you're not paying attention, it makes it real easy for somebody to follow you. If you're walking with a purpose and you're walking fast, that person now has to walk fast too, and it makes them stand out, which they don't want to do. That's one thing. Yeah. And then if you do think somebody is following you, you can do things like in your example, Chris, when they were in Walmart, walk to the front of the store, walk out of the store, then turn around and walk right back in.
Yeah.
So that's like doubling back like that, like doing an unusual movement like that. If a person is following you, they're going to have to do it too, or they're going to have to break off. And then that goes back to the point of like, maybe they were following you, maybe they weren't, but now it's over and who cares? And now you get to go home safe.
Right.
So
and just to kind of touch on that, when you were talking about the girl with the airport, when she got to the bottom of the airport and looked and saw that, or the escalator, and saw that he had jumped on, a good fix there, or a good, kind of combat, was to get back on and go right back up the escalator and literally just stare at him the entire way. What's he going to do? I mean, if he's going to he's going to either turn around and run back up the escalator, or he's going to try to jump over the escalator. But either way, now you've created a little bit of space to then, understand what needs to happen. And then you can just wait at the top of the escalator. And when he comes up, Sparta kick him and say, "This is Sparta."
Yeah. But I think the lady, the girl in the Instagram video, I think she made good choices. I think she made the right decisions. I think she did the right thing. But that also is a good example of something you can do that's an irregular movement to like I said, break the pattern. And then you're forcing, if that person is following you, then you're forcing them to they either have to break off or they have to copy your little unusual movement, which makes them stand out and confirms that they are a threat. So
awesome. Well, listen, folks, as usual, we end this show with a big bit of gratitude and thank you. Thank you for taking time to join us every week to listen to these or watch these. Obviously, this is a video and audio podcast, so you can find it on YouTube. The show always airs the day after it launches on your audio podcast. So Spotify or Apple, always launching on Thursday. So thank you guys again. You stay safe out there. And until next time, Jamie.
My sign off is always to tell you that it's easy to be hard, but hard to be smart. And this is one of the most perfect examples of that. If you think you're a person that's being hard because you're carrying a Glock and you've got this brass knuckles in your pocket and all this stuff, and you are walking through the world with this like sense of invisibility, that's an example of you being hard. But an example of being smart is putting your phone down, walking fast, observing your surroundings, and then creating an environment where you will completely avoid having to use that Glock and those brass knuckles for the rest of your life. So it's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart. And I'm going to throw out one last little plug for Gary Quisenberry's series of books of spotting danger before it spots you, your teen, or your kids. They're available on Amazon. If you are a person that is interested in this, I highly recommend reading these books. And also, like, I mean, Chris, I think this would be a great gift um, for your friend with the kid in the Walmart. And they're really short. They're easy, quick reads. And I mean, it's cover to cover, valuable, good information. So that's all I got. It's easy to be hard to be smart. And if you want to be smart, these books are a great place to find some smarts. So
awesome. Thanks again, guys. And you stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. ZP002.